I stayed one night at a house that wasn't empty. People always ask me why I don't believe in ghosts. That's not true. I do believe in them. They don't slam doors, they don't scream, they don't show themselves clearly. They wait. And one night in a place I thought was completely empty. I wasn't supposed to stay there. It's the first thing I need to make clear. I was traveling alone for work, passing through a rural town I'd never heard of before. It wasn't on my original plan, but my car started overheating just outside the town limits. By the time I limped into the nearest mechanic, it was already past sunset. The mechanic took one look at the engine and told me I'd need to stay overnight. There were no hotels. He said it casually, like it wasn't important. I should have asked why only sometimes. Hungry. He gave me an address and a phone number. The woman who answered sounded old, not just elderly, but tired. Like her voice had been worn thin by years of repeating the same warnings. I asked if there was anything I should know. Then she said, "Lock the doors. Don't open anything after dark, and if you hear someone inside the house, ignore it." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh back. The house sat at the edge of town, where the streetlights stopped working. It was 2 stories, wooden, with peeling white paint and dark windows that reflected nothing but the trees behind me. No neighboring houses, no fences. Just forest pressing in on all sides. The air felt wrong. The woman met me on the porch. She didn't invite me inside. She handed me a key and looked me directly in the eyes. "Bedroom is upstairs." I asked why.
Yes.
Then she left. No explanation. No goodbye. Just walked down the steps and disappeared into the dark, like she'd have done this 1,000 times before. I told myself it was small-town superstition. Old people liked stories. Silence made things feel scarier than they were. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Smell hit me first: dust, old wood, something faintly metallic. The house was furnished, but minimally. When I closed the door behind me, the sound echoed longer than it should have. I explored the first floor quickly. The basement door was at the end of the hallway. It wasn't locked, but it had scratch marks around the frame, like something had tried to claw its way out. I didn't touch it. Upstairs, the bedroom was small, clean, too clean. The bed was already made, like they knew I was coming. I checked the windows. All of them were sealed shut. That should have bothered me more than it did. I ate some food I'd picked up earlier, showered, and tried to relax. But the silence pressed against my ears. No insects. No wind. No distant cars. At exactly 10:17 p.m. I heard the first sound. I told myself it was the house settling. Temperature changes. Then the footsteps stopped, and something dragged across the floor. I remembered the woman's words. "If you hear someone inside the house, ignore it." So I did. I sat on the couch, staring at the dark hallway, listening as footsteps paced back and forth above me. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. Whoever or whatever it was moved like it knew I was listening. After 10 minutes, the sound stopped. I exhaled, like someone standing inches away, breathing through their nose. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. Every instinct screamed at me to look, but something deeper told me that if I did, I wouldn't be alone anymore. The breathing stopped. The silence returned. I didn't sleep. I lay in the upstairs bed, staring at the ceiling, counting every creak, every shift of the house. At 2:03 a.m., I heard my name. Soft. Right next to my ear. It wasn't whispered. It wasn't spoken. It was copied. It's like someone had heard my name once and tried to recreate it without understanding how humans speak. I kept my eyes closed. The voice repeated my name again, closer. Then it said, "You can look now." I didn't. Something crawled onto the bed. The weight felt wrong to evenly distributed, like it didn't have joints. Then the weight lifted. Footsteps moved toward the door, and for the first time, I heard something go into the basement. The door opened and didn't close. I stayed in that bed until sunrise. When light finally filled the room, I ran. I didn't pack. I didn't look around. I grabbed my keys and rushed downstairs. The basement door was open. Against my better judgment, I looked. The stairs led down into darkness, but the walls were covered in writing, carved into the wood. Names. At the bottom, Something had scratched a message deep into the floor. IT doesn't like to be seen. I slammed the door shut and left. The mechanic fixed my car later that day. Asked him about the house. He just nodded. Yeah, he said. People don't stay long. I asked what it was. He shrugged. Whatever learned how to pretend, I never went back to that town. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear breathing behind me and something that sounds almost like my name. If you ever stay somewhere unfamiliar and someone gives you rules that sound strange, follow them. Some things don't want to hurt you. You just want to be noticed. They say curiosity kills more than just cats. I never really understood what that meant until the night I answered a phone call I should have never ever picked up. It was just past midnight, and the city outside had finally gone quiet. I had just moved into my first apartment, a small, slightly run-down unit on the top floor of an aging building. I was completely alone, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, exhausted from the move, and just trying to relax for the first time in days. I certainly wasn't expecting anything unusual, and then my phone rang. The screen lit up with the words "unknown caller." Now, usually I'd just ignore it, let it go to voicemail. Spam calls, right? But for some reason, a strange, nagging feeling in my gut told me to answer. So against my better judgment, I pressed the green button. For a moment, there was nothing. It's just dead silence. I almost hung up, thinking it was a bad connection. But then, a whisper came through the speaker. It was so clear, so close, it sounded like someone was standing right next to my ear. It said, "Don't hang up. I'm here." I froze, my heart instantly pounding in my chest. The voice was breathy and intimate, yet it came from the tiny speaker of my phone. "Who is this?" I managed to whisper back, my voice trembling. The line went silent again. I held my breath, listening, and then I heard a giggle. It was low, hollow, and deeply unsettling. A cold chill ran down my spine. That was it for me. I slammed the end call button, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I should have left it at that. I really should have, but I didn't. I tried to get some sleep, telling myself it was just a prank call, some bored teenager with a creepy voice app. But every creak of the old floorboards, every hum from the ancient refrigerator sent a jolt of anxiety through me. My new apartment suddenly felt menacing. Then, at exactly 1:17 a.m., my phone rang again. Same number, unknown caller. This time, I didn't answer. It went to voicemail. A notification popped up. Hesitantly, I played the message. It's the same childish voice, like a little girl, came through, but it was colder this time. "I told you I was here." Then it added, "Come find me." A wave of pure terror washed over me. I threw my phone across the bed, staring at my bedroom door, as if expecting it to burst open. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I heard it. A slow, agonizing creak from my bedroom door. It wasn't the sound of it opening, but more like the pressure of someone leaning against it from the other side. My phone, which had been lit up on the bed, suddenly went dark. And in that exact same instant, I felt an icy cold breath against the back of my neck. The next day, I tried desperately to convince myself I had imagined it all. Stress from the move, an overactive imagination, a vivid nightmare, anything but the truth. But the apartment itself started behaving strangely. I'd come home from work to find doors I knew I had locked now slightly ajar. Small objects I'd left on the coffee table were now neatly placed on the floor. One afternoon, I noticed a thin crack in a window I hadn't even touched. It felt deliberate. It's not like a burglary. Nothing was ever stolen. It was more like someone was playing a game with me, subtly changing my environment. At night, it got worse. I started hearing footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing the length of my tiny living room. And then came the whispers. Always the same faint whispers, drifting from the other room, always saying, "Come find me." By the fourth night, I was living on a knife's edge, and whatever was in my apartment grew bolder. I had a full-length mirror leaning against the wall in my bedroom. I woke up in the middle of the night for no reason, my eyes instantly drawn to it. I could see my own reflection in the moonlight, but I wasn't alone. There was a shadow in the mirror, a small, childlike figure standing right behind me. It was pale, with long, dark hair that covered its face. My blood ran cold. I whipped my head around to look behind me. There was nothing there, just empty space. My heart hammering, I slowly turned back to the mirror. Figure was gone. Just as I let out a shaky breath, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new text message. I opened it. Just 3 words from the unknown number. Don't look away. The next morning, sleep-deprived and terrified, I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. During my lunch break, I started digging into the history of my apartment building. I managed to find an online forum for residents, past and present. The stories I found made my stomach turn. The previous tenant in my exact unit had moved out abruptly, leaving most of their belongings behind, just like the landlord had told me. Other posts from years back mentioned strange occurrences. Doors slamming on windless nights, lights flickering on and off, objects moving on their own, and whispers. Multiple people mentioned hearing whispers, especially around midnight. Then I found it. A newspaper archive from decades ago. A young girl had died in that very apartment. She had been left alone for days, and no one noticed she was gone until it was too late. Every tenant since then had reported contact. I finally realized this presence wasn't trying to hurt me. It was just lonely, terribly, eternally lonely.
Finally realized this presence wasn't trying to hurt.
On the 5th night, I knew I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the darkness, waiting, right on schedule. Just after midnight, the phone rang. This time I answered. I didn't say a word. The childish voice whispered, "I'm in the corner." My eyes darted to the darkest corner of the living room, and there it was. A small, pale figure, its face hidden by that curtain of long dark hair. Its eyes were like 2 dark hollow pits in the shadows. It didn't move toward me. It just stood there, waiting. Then it whispered again, the sound seeming to come from all around me at once. "Stay. Play with me. Don't leave." The temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my own breath fogging in the air. My body was frozen in place, a prisoner of fear. Then, it started to move. It glided across the floor, slow and impossibly smooth, almost floating. A book slid off a shelf before it even got close. A cup rattled on the kitchen counter. I scrambled backwards, pressing myself into the corner of the couch, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My hand trembling uncontrollably, found my phone still clutched in my palm. I brought it to my mouth. You need to leave," I stammered into the receiver. The figure in the corner paused its slow, silent dance. The apartment fell completely still. Then the voice came through the phone, no longer whispering, but cold and clear. "No one leaves. Not for long. Not until I let them." In that horrifying moment, I understood. Answering that first call wasn't just a wrong number. It was an invitation. I had let it in. And now, it wouldn't leave until it decided I could. I stayed awake all night, too scared to even blink, watching the small shadow stand motionless in the corner. As the first rays of dawn finally broke through the window, I bolted. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone and ran. I didn't pack, didn't call the landlord, I didn't look back. Practically fled the city, crashing on a friend's couch 100 miles away before finding a new place. For weeks I couldn't sleep properly. In the dead of night I'd swear I could hear a phantom phone ringing. I'd catch faint giggles on the edge of my hearing, or whispers that sounded like, "Come find me." It felt like it was still following me. I changed my number. I moved again. But even now, I never feel completely alone at night. I don't know what that thing was. A ghost? A tormented spirit? Just a fragment of a lonely child trapped between worlds? All I know for sure is that some things answer when you call. Some things just wait for you to do the calling, and some things refuse to ever let go. Now, whenever my phone rings late at night from an unknown number, I let it ring. I will never, ever pick up. Because I learned the hard way that some calls aren't for you. They're for trapping you. So a word of advice. If you ever get a call from an unknown number in the middle of the night, and you hear a whisper you can't quite explain, do not answer. Do not engage. Because curiosity can follow you for a very, very long time. Sometimes whatever answers on the other end never really hangs up. Thanks for listening. If you have a story you want to share, let me know in the comments below. Stay safe out there. Before I moved into that apartment, the landlord asked me a very strange question. Didn't ask about my job or how long I planned to stay. Just looked at me and asked, "Do you sleep with the lights off?" I laughed and told him of course I did. He nodded slowly, handed me the keys, and said, "You might want to rethink that." I really should have listened. The apartment was cheap, which, looking back, was the first red flag. It was on the 3rd floor of an old building wedged between newer ones, like it was a place that time had just forgotten. The hallway had paint peeling and long, sad strips, and the air had this permanent smell of damp wood and old dust. But inside my unit, it was spotless, almost too clean. It felt staged, like a showroom. There were no personal items, no decorations, no photos left behind, just blank walls and this heavy, intentional silence. The first night was fine. I was so exhausted from moving all day that I passed out and slept like a rock. The second night, however, that's when I noticed the chair. It was a simple wooden chair I had left, pushed up against the bedroom wall. But when I woke up, it was sitting at the foot of my bed. It was perfectly centered, facing me. My first thought was that I must have moved it in my sleep. Maybe I was sleepwalking. But something about its position really creeped me out. It wasn't just moved, it was placed. It wasn't crooked or sloppy. It was deliberate. So the next night I decided to test it. I pushed the chair back against the wall, and just to be sure, I stacked a few of my moving bags in front of it. I wanted proof that I wasn't going crazy, and I woke up the next morning my heart dropped. The bags were neatly placed on the floor beside the chair, and the chair itself was back at the foot of my bed. Only this time it was a little closer. On the 4th night, I heard footsteps right outside my door. They were slow and measured, with this faint dragging sound, like one foot was heavier than the other. I held my breath and crept to the peephole. The hallway was completely empty. There was no one there. But the footsteps continued, pacing back and forth, back and forth. It sounded like someone was waiting, just on the other side of the door, waiting for me to let them in. I didn't get a single minute of sleep after that. The apartment had one mirror located above the bathroom sink. On the 5th night, as I was brushing my teeth, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My reflection blinked, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at myself, my eyes wide open, while the face in the mirror blinked again. I couldn't look away, terrified of what I might see if I did. When I finally forced myself to turn from the sink, I heard a whisper right behind me. A voice said, "You see it too." I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. Of course, no one was there. The bathroom was empty. But when I dared to look back at the mirror, my reflection was smiling at me. The next morning I was a wreck. I saw my next door neighbor in the hall and decided to ask her if anyone had lived in my apartment before me. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting away. Then she leaned in a little and said, "They never stay long." She told me about the last tenant, a quiet, polite man who lived alone. Everything seemed fine until one day the neighbors heard him screaming inside his apartment, yelling at someone who wasn't there. When the police finally came, they found him just sitting in the dark, staring at the corner of his bedroom. He kept repeating the same sentence over and over. At 1 T, leave the chair. The man moved out that very same night. No notice, no explanation. He just left. That night, armed with this terrifying new information, I sat on my bed and decided to face it. I spoke out loud into the empty room. I know you're here. The air in the room instantly dropped, becoming icy cold. Then I heard it. The sound of wood scraping across the floor. The chair moved, on its own. It slid slowly from the wall towards the bed. And then the voice spoke again, not a whisper this time, but a clear voice right behind me. It said, I was here first. It wasn't threatening. It didn't scream or shout, it just explained. It told me it had died in that very apartment decades ago. It was a man who had lived his life alone and had been forgotten by everyone. It said the building changed, the city changed, but it couldn't. It was stuck. It stayed, watching tenant after tenant, waiting for someone who could finally see it, now that it could. It said it didn't want to be alone again. The last night I spent there was the worst. I was lying in bed, frozen with fear when I felt the mattress dip beside me. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. I could just feel the weight, a cold, heavy pressure sinking into the bed right next to my body. And then the voice whispered directly into my ear, if you leave, I'll go with you. That was it. That's when I ran. I didn't even pack. I just grabbed my keys and my phone and bolted out the door. I moved out the next morning. I left most of my things behind. I especially left that chair. Found a new apartment across town in a new building. But sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I'll hear it. Faint scraping sound, like a wooden chair being dragged across the floor in a room I know is completely empty. And now, I always sleep with the lights on. It's because deep down, I don't think it stayed behind in that apartment. I think it kept its promise. So if you ever move into a new place that feels a little too empty, where the furniture seems like it was arranged for someone else, ask yourself one question. Who was it waiting for? Thanks for listening. If you have a story like this, I'd love to hear it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there. The ghost didn't haunt the house. It followed me. When most people think ghosts are tied to places, old houses, abandoned hospitals, graveyards. I used to believe that too, till I realized the thing I encountered didn't belong to a building at all. It belonged to me. And once it noticed me, it didn't stay behind. I wasn't a believer. Didn't grow up with ghost stories or superstition. My parents were practical people. Something couldn't be explained. It was ignored until it could. Cold spot, strange sound, pipes feeling watched, imagination. So when my cousin asked me to stay at her apartment for a week while she visited family, I didn't hesitate even after she warned me the place was a little strange. Her exact words were, nothing bad ever happens. It's just active. I laughed. Apartments creak, buildings settle, neighbors make noise. Ghosts weren't even on my list of possibilities. I moved in on a Sunday afternoon. By Sunday night, I stopped laughing. And the apartment was small, one bedroom, narrow hallway, bathroom at the end, living room connected to the kitchen. It smelled clean, too clean. Like someone had scrubbed away not just dirt, but history. The first night was uneventful. The second night I heard footsteps, not above me, not outside, inside the hallway. Slow steps pacing from the bedroom to the bathroom, back again. I sat up in bed, listening. They stopped the moment I focused on them. I checked the apartment. No one there, no open windows, no explanation. I slept with the light on after that. And by the third day, the apartment felt different. That scary aware. I'd feel it when I walked from one room to another, like crossing into a gaze I couldn't see. Like something turned its attention toward me whenever I moved. Objects started shifting. Nothing dramatic. Keys would move from the counter to the table. Cabinet doors would be open when I knew I'd closed them. The bathroom mirror fogged up once. Even though no one had used the shower, that was the first time I spoke out loud. Okay? I said, trying to sound calm. If someone's here, I'm just visiting. The apartment was silent. Then the bedroom door slowly closed on its own. So the voice came on the fifth night. I was half asleep when I heard it. A child, a girl, maybe 7 or 8, she was humming, softly, from inside the bathroom. My cousin didn't have children. No neighbors had kids. The humming stopped the moment I sat up. Then the girl spoke. Why won't you look at me? The voice wasn't threatening. It sounded sad. That scared me more than anger ever could. Stayed in bed until morning. On the next day, I asked the landlord about the apartment. He hesitated. That was all I needed to know. He eventually told me someone had died there years ago. Single mother. Sudden illness. Her daughter survived. Moved away. Never came back. That night I dreamed of standing in the hallway while a small hand tugged at my sleeve. When I looked down, there was nothing there. Lights flickered only when I entered a room. The TV turned on by itself, always static. Footsteps followed me from room to room. But the worst part was the feeling, the certainty. I wasn't alone anymore. Whatever was there was growing impatient. On the 7th night, the humming returned. Closer inside my bedroom. I whispered, please stop. The humming stopped. Then the voice said, you can see me now. The room went ice cold. My breath fogged. Something sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped, and I felt a small hand rest on my ankle. I don't know why I looked. Fear, curiosity, exhaustion, maybe all three. At the foot of my bed stood a little girl, pale, too pale. Her eyes were wrong, not empty, not glowing, just unfinished, like someone had forgotten to complete them. She smiled. I followed you, she said. I asked where. She tilted her head. Out, she replied. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't tied to the apartment. She was tied to who noticed her. I left the next morning. Didn't tell my cousin the truth, didn't look back, but the presence didn't fade, it changed. I'd catch reflections in mirrors that didn't move when I did. I'd hear humming in places far from that apartment. Dress rooms, hallways, empty rooms, always the same tune, always soft, always close. Or it stopped months later. One night while I was half asleep, I heard her voice one last time. Thank you for seeing me. I never heard the humming again, but sometimes, when I'm very tired, I feel like something is standing just outside my door, waiting to be noticed again. If you ever experience something paranormal, and it reacts when you acknowledge it, stop. Some spirits don't want help, they want connection. And once they find it, they don't always let go. Something knocked from inside the walls. I've never been afraid of old houses. They creak, they groan, make noises that sound like footsteps when they cool down at night. That's what I believed. Until I stayed in a house where the knocking didn't come from the doors, it came from inside the wall. This happened when I accepted a temporary caretaking job in a remote area. The house belonged to an elderly couple who had moved into assisted living. My job was simple. Stay there for 2 weeks, keep the lights on, make sure nothing broke. They didn't mention anything unusual. They didn't have to. The house told me on the first night. It was massive, 2 stories, long hallways, too many rooms. It's the kind of place where sound travels strangely. The moment I closed the front door, the silence felt heavy like the house noticed me. The knocking started around midnight. 3 slow taps. Not on the door, not on the window. From inside the wall next to my bed. I sat up, holding my breath. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. I pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. I told myself it was pipes, old plumbing, rodents. That explanation lasted exactly 1 night. In the second night, the knocking followed me. When I moved to the living room, knock, 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 from behind the couch. When I went upstairs, knock, 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 from the hallway wall. Always 3 knocks. Always slow. Always deliberate. Never knocked when I wasn't in the room. That's when I realized it wasn't random. It was on the 4th night. I heard something worse. After the knocking stopped, I heard breathing. Muffled. Like someone breathing through insulation. Then a whisper. I know you're awake. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It sounded trapped and desperate. There was one door in the house I hadn't opened. A guest room at the end of the hallway, locked. The knocking always came from that side of the house. On the 5th night, curiosity won. I unlocked the door. The room was empty. No furniture, no windows. Just walls covered in scratch marks. Fingerprints pressed into the paint. From the inside, that I called the elderly couple the next morning, there was a long pause when I described the knocking. Finally, the woman said, we didn't think it would talk to you. She told me they heard it for years. It knocked when they were alone. It whispered when they answered. And it got louder when they tried to ignore it. They sealed the room after it started begging to be let out, and I planned to leave. But that night, the knocking didn't stop. 3 knocks became constant, rapid, violent. The walls shook. The whisper turned into pleading. Please, I can't breathe in here. Then the knocking stopped, and I felt something press against the wall behind me, like a body trying to get through. I left before sunrise. The job was never mentioned again. But sometimes, late at night, when my house is quiet, I hear 3 slow knocks from inside the wall, and I never answer. If you hear something knocking, it knows when you're awake. Don't respond. Some things don't want to scare you. They want out.